Do you remember how it felt like waiting for your first child to be born? Do you remember the rush or the dread that went through your body when you found out that you're going to be a parent soon? That a little human will be growing inside your body and come out to be someone with their own hopes and dreams? Do you remember looking into the mirror day by day, trying to see if you have a bump or not? Do you remember wondering what they would look like, talk like, laugh like, smell like? Do you remember wondering if they would love you or not? Or if they'll even like you? Do you remember the overwhelming feeling of not being ready for them? Or of not being a great parent at sucking at this thing that you have supposedly been put on this earth to do? I'm willing to bet that you remember all of this, and what you're about to listen to is a story of one young couple going through these thoughts day in, day out. Our episode today is the first part of a series that I'm calling Baby Akinyemi, that will follow Tomide and Kalpa, a young couple living in Kilifi who are about to welcome their firstborn son. This series will follow them into their journey of parenthood spread across time. This is the third episode of Mama Tale Season 3. I'm your host, Sally Kuria. Tomide and Kalpa met back in 2015. They were students at USIU, that's the United States International University in Nairobi, and at that time they had both individually decided to take part in their university's Mr. and Mrs. pageant. Tom signed up to the pageant to help him get out of his shell a little bit, and Kalpa joined in to shine a light on the Women in Tech Club that she was part of. At this point, they have very different versions of how they actually met, but they started talking and eventually were paired up for the competition. They started working together and their friendship bloomed from this point, and they ended up winning the pageant and went on to work together for a year as ambassadors to the university. After that year, they realized that they cared for each other deeply and they felt like their partnership was something that was meant to be. After dating for a while, they decided to share the news with their families and got mixed reactions. It is at this point that I'd like to mention that Tomide is Nigerian and Kalpa is Indian. As you can imagine, questions were asked. We will pick up the story from here. Did you face any sort of, backlash?
I think initially we were in a good place, I would say, or in sort of like a shell, because this all started in university and you know a USIU as a uni, it's very multicultural. Um, so it's like a utopia, you don't actually face the real world until you get out there. So in uni, when we're dating, everything was great. We didn't have any backlash or anything like that. And then slowly now, when life begins after you graduate, you now start looking for a job, and all that, and then your relationship also goes under a test because your priorities are different now. You don't necessarily just hang out at the cafeteria all the time. So I think more so, I would say the test was more for our relationship at the beginning, really seeing if the both of us are in it with each other for the long run. And then slowly, when we started facing some of the questions and some of the, can this thing work out, was really, I would say, at the point of our engagement, which was at this point, I think 4 years. Was it
Yeah,
4 years
four
after?
years.
So yeah, because we were trying, we weren't necessarily keeping it on the low, but we were not on YouTube or anything like that at
Yeah,
that time. So once we now got on YouTube, obviously, your first 100 people are just your 100 people watching. And then when your videos start to do well, you see these comments from across the world, like, "What are you doing with this lady?" or "What are you doing with this man?" You know, and people have their opinions on your relationship, but also because you put it out there. You kind of have the responsibility to want to answer those things. And then when Tom finally proposed after 4 years, my it's like finally it clicked for my family that this is actually serious. Um, and so they had all these questions coming up, like, but how will this work? And we've never done this before. Like, what does this mean? Like, just so many like abstract questions that I didn't have answers to, honestly. But the thing that helped was that from Tom's side, like his family, they had gotten to know me over these 4 years for in a very deep way. And there was a level of stability there, where they were like, we know it's Kalpa. We understand issues may come up, but I think we'll see how that goes. But we are with you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it was really handling one side more than the other.
It wasn't chaotic with my side of the family, but one thing that I intentionally did from the beginning was that I didn't tell them about my relationship until we were a year in. And the rationale for that was that, you know, my parents are cool. I know that I didn't anticipate any type of friction or anything, but I just thought that, you know what, if I'm a year in and I break the news, already they see that I'm not doing this for a joke. Like, okay, together for a year. So it's like, oh, wow. So that was my own plan. And I let them know at that point in time. And, they were open up for it. And around that time, my grandfather had passed away in Nigeria. So my dad had the idea that, you know what, if this is the case, then let's take her with us for the funeral so she can also meet the side of the family. Before we knew it, Kalpa joined us and she came to Nigeria. So it was kind of interesting because she met my family and everyone met her. So it's like it was a way of also, I guess, my dad kind of protecting us and letting the family know that, hey, this is our daughter. And the ironic thing is that my grandfather, before he passed away, he knew or he told my dad that he believes that Kalpa and I will end up together. And the funny thing is that we were not even dating at the time. So yeah, so I guess in some sense, he kind of paved the way for us to the point that even when we got to Nigeria, even everyone, all his siblings knew her. He used to send pictures from our Mr. and Miss thing. So I think that that's now from my side of the family. So I guess from there on, over the other 4 years, and the reason why I guess I would say it took as long as it did was knowing that okay, yeah, we're in this for the long run, and but we still didn't know how the other side will unfold because Kalpa's parents wanted it here in Kenya. They were in India, and so really just trying to see how to navigate that. But yeah, like Kalpa said, I think one of the things that YouTube did was it was a way of also us showcasing to people that hey, this is what our relationship looks like. If people don't see, it's very easy for you to have misconceptions about how the relationship is. And as much as with video content, you do control your narrative, at least people were able to see how we interact with each other. And I think from that, even the family started to get involved. So I remember some of Kalpa's cousins knew about us, knew about our channel. So I was not a stranger. And I think that kind of helped with breaking things down on their side.
Let me bring it back to kids, right? At what point did you start thinking about kids?
Well, I will start by saying I love kids, and I used to joke with Kalpa that yeah, we're gonna have 6 kids. Say like something we talked about from the beginning as a joke. So I guess we both always knew, in some sense, that yeah, we do love kids, and we're gonna have them. I guess the question is how many, and I guess yeah, as time has gone on, that number has shifted, and especially now. So
What number are you on now?
we've still, I don't think we agree on this point
Yeah,
completely, but our numbers are between 3 and 4.
yeah. I'm for 3, and Tom is for 4.
But this is my thinking. I'm like, if we're gonna have like family competitions and games, I don't like the idea of having an odd number. I just feel like it's so odd, like because then you'll force one of us to be in a group with like less. And I'm like, let's be equal. Let's have like a team on each side. If we're gonna do challenges,
So
it's mom and 2 kids, dad and 2 kids.
yeah,
I
but
don't want to
I'm
do
not going to tell our last kid we had you because we wanted to even
that's not
out the
that's not what we're
family.
doing. But I just feel like having even numbers. It's just I don't know. It is yeah. But in all honesty, as time has gone on, because I have two siblings, and I see how cool how the relationship that we have, and it's great and all. But so I guess to some extent, I'm like, okay, three is not bad, but I would really love four. So let's just see what happens.
Before you guys got pregnant, what image of parenthood did you have in your head? Like, what did you think this life with kids would look like?
Mhm.
Hmm, it's a very good question. I think from my point of view, I would just say now in hindsight, it was a very utopian, ignorant point of view. Because I think, like even when I think about kids, I would always skip mentally when I think about, like, if you ask me, if you say baby, what comes to my mind? I skip the newborn thing. Like when you say baby to me, I'm thinking like from nine
For
months, 9 months towards 1 year. You know, when they can move around, crawl, and that's what I think about when you say baby. That's how I always looked at it. And I realized that wow, in this process now, I have started to realize that, oh my God, there's also a newborn phase where they are extremely small and so much goes on in between that time. And, one of our friends recently had a child, and I remember being in their place and I'm like, they were asking me, do you want to carry him? I'm like, no, like, because I'm looking at how small the baby is. I'm like, no, please, I'll just walk, So I realize now, um, my understanding of the image that I had of what it means to have a child is a lot different now. I feel like now there's more of the reality that okay, yeah, there's this phase that I was ignoring the whole time. Like we watched a video recently yesterday where like you look at the first poop the child has and it's black and I'm like, yo, this is not what I was prepared for. This is not what I was prepared for. So I think
he looked horrified.
like we watch videos, I just like, what is going on? You know? So I think now I'm getting it's the reality is setting in, and I feel like now I'm becoming more pragmatic.
I think for me, the for the baby to come in, like there's the pregnancy stage. And before I got pregnant, I always like had this pregnancy stage as one big block of thing that you just pass and like now boom, you have a baby. And now that I'm pregnant, like, all these little milestones that you look at, all these things that your pregnancy is broken down into like first trimester, second trimester, third trimester. Within the third trimester, there are even different things. Within labor, there's early labor, active labor, transition, pushing, all these little things that obviously I didn't know about before. It's like a huge level of knowledge that you have to say that you didn't have when you started. And like the baby just doesn't appear. Like there's this huge chunk of time, 9 months or so, that your body goes through and you go through, and all these stages within that transition to get to having the baby. I think that is what really just still feels like shock to me, because now as we're even heading closer to the due date, time feels like it's stretching and stretching, you know like every week feels like, okay, that's like a whole month. And I'm just like, I didn't know this before. Is it that I didn't see people who were pregnant before, or was I just not keen to like learn these things, or did we not are we supposed to be taught and we weren't?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll also add, I think also one thing that even back to like the ignorance is when I used to think about the idea of children, I would just think about all the scenarios that like the fun scenarios, the playtime, this and that, and not really realizing that wow, like now as I'm learning, you realize how even the idea of how many diapers you have to use like daily, and you're like, what is this? Like, and then even understanding just the different stages you have to face and all the things that you need to get. So I think there's this reality of what this whole pregnancy phase and the journey to parenthood entails. And I guess because of maybe not really being exposed enough or not having enough people around, or even like among our friend groups, not too many people who are at this phase yet, it's very easy to be extremely ignorant of the realities of becoming a parent.
How did you guys find out that you're gonna be parents?
Huh. Let me think. So it was, I think there was a period where um, definitely Kalpa had missed her period, and immediately, like, okay, we're like, oh my gosh, because she's very usually accurate. She's to the point. She's one of those people who, like, her period, she's just like, it's like she project manages her period time. Like, it's so on the dot. Like, you can predict, and she missed it. And whenever that, if like, that is, especially for someone like her, that is not normal. So at the beginning, I think we ignored it a bit, and a few days passed, and like, okay, maybe we need to just check on this. So we got the test and everything, and we did it. But I remember the first test that we did. I don't know what went on with that thing, but it just looked like either the test was broken, or maybe we didn't know what we were reading. So I think, yeah, we moved
It was
past that.
like one of those inconclusive results
Yeah.
with like one faint line that looks like it doesn't want to be there, but also it's trying to show you something. So yeah, it looked like maybe there's something here, maybe not. But I remember that we immediately got super excited about that,
Yeah.
um, which we shouldn't have in hindsight, because we got really excited. And like the first, I think the next 2 days is just us in this like sort of bliss moment of, is this really happening? Um, and then 2 days later, I got my period, and it was such a bummer. Um, I think we never really discussed what that moment felt like,
Mm.
because it felt like all the joy we felt the past 2 days, and this future that we knew we wanted to have, is no more, um, and we don't understand what's happening. So anyway, I think we kind of just kept quiet about it. We're both very like, we want to internalize what we're feeling before we like talk about it and everything. So I think we just took time to do that, and then the next month the same thing happened, and it was delayed. And so I was like, okay, let me do a test, but let me warn you, don't get too excited, and I'll also do the same. And this time around, the result was a little bit more conclusive than the last one. Like the line was a little bit more darker, and it looked like, okay, according to what this thing says, I think I'm pregnant. But we were still like, you know what? Please, let's not do what we did last month, because that's like it's exhausting. Um, and then we waited, I think, even a week or two, if I'm not wrong, because I was just telling Tom, maybe it will delay and then the period will come. So let's give it time, like a week or two. And then after that, we went to the hospital, um, and they were like, we'll do a scan, blah, 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 blood test. And yeah, they were like, congratulations, yeah, yeah. But we can't hear a heartbeat. Um, so just come back after like three or 4 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, it's like about a month or so, a few weeks down. Mm.
So again, we held back our excitement. Um, we didn't even want to tell each other like what we are expecting, like, oh my gosh, the baby and all that stuff. So after like waiting that long wait of 3 weeks or so, we went back and we finally heard the heartbeat for the first time. And I think that is when it actually clicked that we are going to be parents.
Yeah.
Because until then, even between the both of us, we were kind of keeping it very low. We wouldn't talk much about it. We didn't share it with the family or anybody. So it was a very like, you know, I don't know. It was very like one of those moments where you kind of just contain yourself as much as possible and hope for the best. And then when we heard the heartbeat, like that's I think the thing that now brought us to reality.
What have you learned about Kalpa so far? Um, when she like during her pregnancy journey.
During her pregnancy, I think, you know how people tell you, there's this quote about, like, money doesn't change who you are, it amplifies who you are. it amplifies, so it shows you who you truly are as an individual. I think in the same sense, also this pregnancy has brought out a lot of, at least from my own perspective, I'm able to see a lot of things that I knew were in her, but a lot more clear. And I would say that I can see she has been, from my own understanding, probably the most hardworking, kick-ass mom I have ever seen in this period. Because like even like nothing has stopped. Like I remember even she continued her workouts and everything. There's even a day where I was feeling so lazy. I was working in the office and I looked out and I'm seeing her doing her running. And I feel like she's really, really blown me away in the sense that she has not been the typical, you know, pregnancy persona that we're usually fed. Like she's doing what she wants. She's, obviously there are the moments of fatigue here and there, but like I've never, it does not for a second, like she's never really been limited, quote unquote, by her pregnancy. Obviously there's some things she will do, some things she won't take, food wise, but generally I feel like she's still quite the same person. And so I think one of the things that I've learned about her is how resilient she is and how dedicated she is as well. Because even like from early on, like the things that she's learned and how she's putting it into practice and everything. So it's been very honestly, it's been very, very interesting for me just seeing how she has dealt with certain things in this period. Yeah, like, but for sure it has not been like what we're fed in movies and all that. I can't relate because like honestly, even if it to some extent, like if you just take away some of the things that I do, that I have to do just to help, you wouldn't even know she's pregnant. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that I've learned, that she's just, I guess she's just a badass, I guess.
No, she is. She is a badass. She always has been, and I guess, like I said, it's being amplified right now. So Kalpa, from your side, what have you learned about yourself, or what are the things that have also just shocked you about the journey that you're on right now?
Um, I think it's kind of what Tom has said, but from my perspective, it's not like I'm trying to be a badass or that kind of thing. I think part of my personality that I'm also learning is, I think during adversity I really show up for myself in a much stronger way than on a normal day. And the pregnancy is not an adversity, but you know what I mean, like it's something that you're trying to fight this battle. Like this thing, this feeling to want to sleep, this feeling to want to just stop your life and sit. And that's really when I want to fight that, because I don't want to lose myself in the process. So I think what Tom sees is just me striving not to lose myself and my routine. So I think that's something I've learned about myself. Um, and it's something I appreciate. But also another thing, that the other question that you asked was, um, the other things that I've learned in this process is just that, um, I think I have always suppressed my expectations of people. Um, I feel like I grew up in an environment where you just have to do things yourself. You shouldn't be asking for help. You shouldn't be. You should just be independent. It's even embarrassing to ask for help. Um, and so I feel like this pregnancy, because pregnancy is just really a vulnerable time for a woman. It has forced me to actually be okay with expecting things to be done for me. And I could particularly say that even for my husband. So, they're just in the beginning, like I would do everything the way I have been. And then over time, that capacity reduces. I'm not able to stand in the kitchen for long. It's too hot. And, at that moment, I look to him for help. But I also realize I've not been voicing that help. I've not been asking him, like, please help me with this, because it's embarrassing. So I've not been asking, like in words, I've not been asking, "Hi, Sally, could you please help me with this? Because I, at the moment, can't do this." And that's and a gap that I think I've noticed. And this pregnancy has sort of like taught me to just, it's okay to ask for help, but also it just doesn't appear, like you have to actually put it in words so people can show up and be there for you. Um, and yeah, like that's one of the examples. And even the other examples, like the baby shower, for example, like on a normal day, I would do everything. Like I'd want to do the decor, I'd want to figure this out, figure that out. Until like one of my friends was like, why don't you just let it go and let us help you? And I was just like, but how? Like, how could I just ask you guys help me? Like, you guys have like work, you guys have a whole life of your own. And she's like, no, that's what a baby shower is. People do this for you. And in that moment, I was just like, okay, I think my expectations are a little bit misplaced. Um, the way I ask for help is a little bit misplaced. I don't think I'm actually able to voice this. Um, and I had to literally, like, there was a therapy session I had, and I had to ask about this. And my therapist was like, if you grew up in an environment where you were forced to be very independent, um, or people just let you down, you just learn to not ask and just keep moving on by yourself. But there are a situation like, like a phase of life like the pregnancy is an area where I'm realizing it's more than just me.
What are you excited about?
Well, I can start this one. Personally, I feel like I have one of the things I'm passionate about as an individual is the idea of purpose, the idea of the fact that, we all have something unique inside of us, even if we don't know it. We all have something that the world will embrace us for. And the idea and realizing that you have a whole human being who is going to be, serving a different generation entirely, a whole human being who is going to have, unique skill sets and will bring unique solutions, a unique perspective. Um, all that, I guess, I'm really excited about being privileged to foster and care for and nurture that human being to be who they were made to be. I think that's really what I'm excited about. And I know it's not a very straightforward answer. It's so many things in between. Like I'm looking forward to figuring out what my son likes, what are his interests. I'm looking forward to helping him, with the things that he likes. Whether it's a sport or a gift that I've seen, and just kind of creating that environment and just being somebody who can keep pushing him towards his passion and not just passion, things that he's actually good at and everything. So I really look forward to that process. But even beyond that, I just really look forward to just having a son, playing with the son, and the fact that this is a mini me. Kalpa and I the other day were talking about, like, isn't it crazy that this child is going to be half me, half you? The more I think about it, like, that is actually really, really, really crazy. It's quite awesome. Yeah. So I'm just like, I'm really looking forward to being everything. I was thinking about it the other day that, especially as a man, having a son, I feel like even just on this journey, it's taught me a lot more about self love than anything. Because you realize that having a son is basically like, I think about myself in that position. And some of the thoughts that I've been having are like, what are the things that I wish could be done for me at this point? What are the ways I wish people could support me if I was this age, if I was this little? So my son now becomes a reflection of my childhood, and I guess from that point of view, I'm really looking forward to making sure that I can be there for him, the same way I would want to be there for myself, or the same way I would have wanted to have support. So I'm looking forward to so many things. Looking forward to so, and in a not so serious but quite serious, I'm looking forward to buying him a Manchester United jersey and, yeah, letting the world know that this is where his loyalty lies.
Fair enough. And you, Kalpa, what are you excited about?
At this point, I'm really just excited to want to hold my baby, like in their most rawest form of like coming into this world, because that's what I have, waited for all these months. And it's what my body is striving to do right now. So once a baby's out, I just want to hold him. I just want to look at him, look at his, I always tell Tom, I just want to tickle his little feet, the feet that were busy kicking me from inside. Look at those hands. I'm excited to just receive my baby, basically, receive my gift. And I think in the long run, something I'm excited for is how he will learn languages. Because I'm very curious about linguistics, and looking back at my life, that's something that has really been dynamic. Is that I have, I speak a different language at home with my parents. English was most likely the fourth language I learned when I was like about 5 or 6 years old. So I could, from my perspective, I could see how much children can actually learn in terms of languages. Looking back, um,
Okay.
yeah. So the idea that I have is that I will speak to him in Tamil, which is my mother tongue, um, as well as English, and then Tom will basically talk to him in English. And then when he meets his grandparents, they would talk to him in Yoruba. So I'm curious to see how that's going
Yeah.
to work out. I like reading papers on these things, like child development and linguistics. And it's interesting because somehow they piece everything together. But it can get confusing at times. Um, but just seeing him evolve into that is what I'm really excited to see.
We'll be back with Tom and Kalpa after this short break. Hey, here's a little secret. Do you know that this episode is not sponsored by anyone? But you could. Do you have a service or product that will provide value to moms or moms to be? Well, this is your sign to work with me. I won't get into the nitty gritty now because we have a story to get to, but what I can share with you is that there's a super special offer to the first 3 people who want to advertise with the podcast. And you know what's even better? The very first person gets an unbelievable offer to sponsor an episode. So if you're curious to see if this will work for you, shoot me a DM on Instagram, that's at Mama Till's Podcast, or let me know through the link that I will share in the show notes of this episode. Okay, let's get back to the story. The joy of becoming parents is oftentimes overshadowed by the little fears that we have. I remember dreading delivery because I couldn't see how my baby was going to come out of me. I also remember wondering if I would have a good relationship with my daughter because I know mother and daughter relationships aren't always the prettiest things. A lot of these fears are unfounded because there's only so much you can do, but that doesn't make them invalid. I asked Tom and Kalpa what their fears were, and this is what they had to say.
Because of how passionate I am about, this whole thing of purpose and helping my son specifically bring out his gifts and all of those kind of things, I guess a fear that comes is, what if, all this passion doesn't do anything in the first place, you know, and I, instead of helping him figure out his gifts and his skills, I end up kind of getting in the way, if that makes any sense. So because there's something I always talk with Kalp about how at the end of the day I feel like the best thing a parent can do is help a child understand why they're here and give them the tools early on. So I feel like it saves a lot of time because I feel like we all grow up and end up spending our life trying to figure that out. But at the same time, on the journey to help a child, like every parent wants to do, it's very possible that now if you're not careful, you can get to a point where you stop listening or trying to understand how they are feeling or what they want to do, and you now start putting your own agenda in their own way. So, yeah, honestly, I think that's really just one of them. Like, just now being everything that I don't want to be, specifically in that area.
Just like the other one, I think mine is like twofold. There's like the short term things and then like the long term things. And I feel like I empathize more on the short term because that's, where I'm more present right now. And I appreciate the fact that Tom looks at things in the long term because I don't have the space to think about that at the moment. But in the short term, something that came to me was just how, this is a boy, and at some point we are to, circumcise him. And when we talk to other parents who've had boys, they're just like, you do this in the hospital, like they'll tell you what to do. But just that little fear of like, but he's just a little baby, like, so how do you handle a child that is in pain and can't express other than crying? Um, what do they feel like? I don't know how I would detect if my baby is okay. Um, is he crying for milk? Is he crying because he wants to sleep? Is he crying because something is hurting somewhere? Um, so I think those are like the short-term fears. Like if we take him for a vaccine, which of course we want to do, we want to get him really vaccinated against everything in the world. Uh, Injections are just difficult, even as adults. How do you handle the baby? And we usually people look to the mom, like you should know this. This is your baby. Hold your baby and figure it out. But because I'm not there yet, I'm like, wow, okay, how do I soothe the baby? How do I, bring him home and know when the temperature is high, that this is a point we call the doctor. This is a point where we don't panic, we let it pass. um, so those are like the short term things. And even something like, of course it's been like months of us slowly buying things we need for the baby. But the closer we get, we're like, oh my gosh, you see on Instagram this product that somebody has, and you're like, should I be getting that? Like, what if I don't have it, and what if my baby is not comfortable sleeping somewhere or bathing somewhere? That's a fear as a parent I have, because I'm like, wait, should I be buying everything, or should I be buying the bare minimum and only realizing we need things when we get there? So no, those fears are like the short term ones. And then like I would say like the long term things are like just considering the fact that he represents two different communities and culture and languages and continents really. um, you know how would we know when he needs to fit in versus when he's standing out? um, we don't know what our child would look like, right? We don't have a template for this. So, what if there are situations we put him in as parents where we think everything is okay, but to him, it's not okay? Maybe he's talked to a certain way, or he's asked a certain question about his parents that he doesn't fully comprehend to answer. And I am not in that situation to defend him, or take care of that. Like, I think that's a fear I have, is that, okay, what are his safe spaces? What will his safe space be where he's okay with his identity? He's okay with who he is. And as parents, will we recognize the spaces that are not okay for him to thrive in? And then secondly is also, again, coming from my culture of like the South Asian achieving, we are very much the South Asian excellence. You better get an A grade. You better be doing something with your day. Don't look like you're lazy or not doing anything. And that you carry that into adulthood, whereby even rest feels like guilt, where vacations feel like guilt. Um, just knowing that I don't want to put that pressure on my kid to want to achieve something just because it makes me proud or makes his dad proud, um, versus actually just knowing when the right time is to push him. You know what I mean?
What Kalpa has said has kind of probably brought out some things I had not mentioned, but really do touch on some of the fears. I think one of them, besides even this whole thing of like what I said, purpose, skills, is I think the root of that is really just identity. Um, the truth is, you know, we can't relate with. There's no way I'll be able to relate with my son's reality. What I mean is that yes, on one hand, as a husband, it's one thing to know that yeah, I am a Nigerian married to an Indian wife. Kalba, I am an Indian wife married to a Nigerian husband. But then when you have a child that represents both communities living in Kenya, it's a different thing. We can't relate with that. We don't know how our child is going to see the world. We don't know how our child is going to relate to certain things. So I think for me, a fear is on one hand, how do I balance the idea of I want to make sure that my son can embrace all the identities that he represents, but in the process, not lose himself, if that makes sense. Like he's secure in his identity because we have a family friend who called us aside and was talking about how one of the things that he comes his I think his mom is Scottish or Irish and his dad is Kenyan, and he talked about how when he grew up, when he was in the UK, he was too black for his white family. When he came back to Kenya, he was too white for yeah, vice versa. Whenever he was there, exactly, when he came here, so he never really found a place to fit in until he traveled to New Zealand, where like so many people look like him, and he felt like he belonged. So when I heard that story, I was like, man, the truth is we can't understand what our kids are going to go through. We can't understand that reality. It sounds really cool. Like, yeah, I'm half Nigerian, half Indian, and I live in Kenya. But when you're actually a child and you have all these identities and all these people who expect you to know that your culture, I don't know. I just feel like for me, the main thing is also making sure that he's secure in his identity and we don't really cause like a extra layer of problems where identity is concerned, because I feel like that can be a tough one.
Have you guys talked about how you'd handle labor and delivery?
Yeah, I think we have. Not, I don't think we know end to end what that's going to feel like, because I think nobody ever knows until the moment starts. But yeah, because it's not something you rehearse. But I think there are some coping mechanisms we've talked about. I think we've talked about backup plans and how we would handle that. Um, I think here and there we've touched quite a bit.
Do you have a bath plan?
We're actually in the process of like it's one of our main things for this coming week. I don't know if it's this coming week per se, but it's something that is on our to-do list, especially since our last appointment with the doctor. We had asked some questions which kind of pointed to the fact that okay, yeah, now it's time for us to get our birth plan together, and all the videos and things we're watching now, the birth plan is like in our life right now. Birth plan is the trending topic, so we know what some of the elements of the plan will be, but I think just like now, really writing it out and seeing it, we haven't done that.
Do you mind sharing like what elements of the bath, like it is that you have in your mind, like you want to achieve during this time?
Yeah. So, well, I don't know if these are all okay. So, from our understanding, like with the doctor, basically, even from what I had researched, there's not like a universal template, one size fits all model for a birth plan, but it's basically just like all the information you're going to give them beforehand, so they know. So whether it's like, oh, I don't want to lie on my back, I want to be in a different position. So I think certain things like that. I do know Kalpa has brought that up every now and then, but I don't think we've talked in detail about like, okay, I have decided I don't want to be in this position during labor. Yeah, but one thing
So,
we do know as well is that like I'm definitely going to be inside the room, and yeah, I'm definitely going to be filming at least what I can film, and I would like to also be the one to cut the cord, and also, I'd like the opportunity to be able to hold my child at the beginning. There's something really powerful that happened when I was born. And when I was born and I entered, like my father brought me into his arms and he just started to give like really great, powerful affirmations over my life. That was the very first thing I heard. So the very first things I imagine I heard entering this world were words like "you're going to be great," "you're going to know what you're called to do," really, really powerful things like that. So I really want to make that a culture in my life and make sure that that's something I can do at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me it was just really um just telling the nurses and the doctor that I would like movement around that time. So I would like the freedom to want to walk around and stuff. Because I've read of scenarios where they sort of hook you up so much with the wires and everything that it kind of restricts your movement. So when we went to the hospital, we actually did ask, and she said, if you write it, we'll make sure that we give you room for that to happen. um, and then I also, most of these things are things you just read or listen from YouTube or Instagram, and you're like, okay, let me incorporate this. So an example was someone was saying, when you give birth on your back, you have more chances of a tear happening. So why don't you, like, try a different position? And so something that we wanted to put in the plan was just saying that, yeah, just to have the freedom to at that moment even choose to just squat instead of lying back, or be on my force instead of lying back. What that's going to look like on that day, only God knows.
Have you attended bath class?
So we've done a lot of online watching, but there's none on, like, the side we live. um, we don't have that, so we have to go all the way to Mombasa for that to happen. And at the moment I'm just not feeling that road. They're expanding it. It's full of, I don't want to put myself in a car where there's so much movement. So we're trying our best to just learn from all the resources online. And also the breathing classes, I've started to do them online. I don't know how different it is from a physical class because I've not attended a physical class.
I mean, I think what a physical class gave me was exercises to do when I'm in labor and how to tell if I'm in labor and kind of like my husband's role, as well as, one thing I learned is that my support partner needs a support partner, because Tom could get so caught up in everything and he neglects himself. And if he's not doing really well, he won't be able to give you as much support as you need. Like, of course, we were given like a very scary story of this dude was with his wife in labor for over 24 hours and he was so exhausted. And they handed him the baby and then he fainted with the baby in hand, drops the child and then brain injury. You're like, gosh, why are you telling me that? But I think, I don't know if it was a real story or not, but it was just that sense of like insisting that, you know, that your support partner does also need some type of support because of, you know, definitely want to show up 100% for you, while at the same time, especially when things start getting choppy and you know, not so cute, right?
No, you're so right. Yeah. I don't know who I was listening to, and they said, "No, it's not just one person. You might need two people for that day." There's also like an errand boy. Like, this person gets you snacks, water, all that, and there's one person who stays with you to advocate for you. So don't forget that there's one who's with you, and then one who's running around trying to sort out.
The other question I had was, have you figured out who does what once the baby comes? Like, who does night shift? Who does the diapers? Who's cooking? You know?
That's a good question. I
See,
think so far we have figured out the diaper part. And, and the diaper part is Tom at the moment. So far, I feel like for the first month, I just want to stick to, solely breastfeeding. But again, I don't know what would come out from when we have the baby and like leaving the hospital, what plan might come out. But if there was bottle feeding, then, I think the nitrons, Tom is better because he's sort of a night, um, yeah, He's a night guy, basically.
Even though I'm trying to work my way to becoming like an early morning person again, but I guess yeah. it
What else?
I think cooking I have been doing that
Yeah.
already. Like I've actually taken up most of that in this season. But around that time we are also I know my sister wants to be around as well. So I guess some of those things it's really just yeah, like the support system around seeing what is happening. But that's an area that I know my sister wants to get involved. Luckily now we have help in our house. We didn't have help before, so at least now a lot of the basic things are being taken care of. So yeah, I think right now the only department that I need to really figure out and is really like now breaking down the whole food thing, especially for like the post pregnancy side of things, getting those right things. So yeah, I think that now that's the focus.
And both of your cultures have very different approaches to postpartum care, especially food, right?
Yeah. I think the good thing is over the years, like we've exposed each other to each other's like traditional food. So it's not like a shocker. Um, and there are times when I literally just crave like, Nigerian food and instead of like Indian food. And Tom likes Indian food for lunch and, vice versa. So it's really just whatever is nutritious from that we want to take. Yeah. Because I was also gonna tell Tom today that I would like mom, like my mom-in-law, to really take on the role for the food aspect, even if she could make it at her place and then send it over for the first week or two would be so helpful, um, because it's a different ball game, like nutrition, um, directly connected to lactation, and also hunger hits a different way, the baby, from what I hear. And I'm already like that, hungry person as I am right now. So not leaving room for any stress for Tom to have to manage the baby, help me, and then come down and cook something. I think it would just be too much for him, which is why, I was going to suggest that could mom do this? I know like my sister-in-law would love to be here, but that's an if. She works. Leave is something that's like, how it can go with companies. So um, yeah, that's an angle I wanted to take, and I wanted to just give like a list of things I'd be okay with for now. Just saying, I want to have bone broth, I want to have jollof rice, I want to have, so they have an idea of like, okay, what is it that we're making?
You know something interesting as even Kalpa is saying all of this, I realize now that a fear, and I know that this is taking us not slightly back, but a fear that I had without realizing it is just like I don't know how to explain it, but just this uncertainty of will I be able to handle like my stuff and be able to live the life, do my work, still focus on things in this season. Because you start balancing these thoughts. Like, okay, if I'm not able to work and do things, how are certain things going to be done? And then it can get a bit chaotic. So actually, even just hearing this, I'm realizing that yeah, wow, even just the idea of hearing like my mom coming to come like that's actually such a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's also
And you
take out.
forget you will have to still work, like
That's what I'm
you
saying.
don't
Yeah.
have you don't have paternity leave.
Well, you see, in my own case, I do most of my work like alone, so it's not like
It's like a business, you just have to keep things
yeah.
going.
So right now, what the goal is to try and put a lot of things in place now, so during that time, I have more leeway to make certain decisions because ultimately, a lot of the stuff that I do, it really just falls with me. So I guess I am the one who has to determine, are you having paternity leave? Okay. And if the answer is yes, what do I need to do for that to happen realistically? Yeah.
I have one last question before I go. And that is, what type of parent do you think you'd be? Like, who will be the disciplinarian and who will be the fun one?
Dun, dun, dun. I think Kalpa should start.
Like
Yeah, the couple start.
I don't know why, but like I feel like of course I would be the I don't know, I said of course, but I feel like I would be
That's from the heart.
the disciplinarian of the family. Yeah, the strict one. But then I was telling Tom, I don't want to be that parent. Like, why should I be that parent? Why can't you be that and I be the fun parent, right?
I don't
Because
think it's not something you do rock paper scissors to
but we have
determine.
what is the big difference that you and I have in a personality that makes me that way?
No, but you see, I think it all really comes down to like personality. What are you able to tolerate? I think I think for me, knowing myself, I can see how there's certain things that I can do whereby, even just with Kalpa and like up to a certain extent, like okay, I think her reaction towards things, she's very, I'm trying to put the English together. The things that I guess what I would say is that her tolerance for certain things is lower than mine. Do you get what I mean? Like if for example, let's just use a very unrelated example. If the house is or room is in a certain way or a mess, and we were both to do something about it, you see, her tolerance towards action is much lower than mine. Do you get what I mean? So I think also that's really just a personality thing. It's something. That's just how she is, and I feel like even coming to a child, there's certain things that can seep into. So it could be something as simple as okay, um, this is you can't have this beyond this time. Obviously, as a parent, every now and then you will, go the extra mile and just allow them. But I feel like my tolerance for saying no in certain situations might not be as high or as low as hers. So I think it's really just a matter of like the situation at hand. However, I do know that even if I am not the quote unquote strict one, when things reach beyond a certain point of view, I do know that there's only so much a child can do. But like when they push the buttons, I know that there's a certain point that they would reach where I would definitely be the more strict one in certain situations. So I don't know. I think that it's going to be like a balance type of thing you know. But yeah, I do know that there will be moments where if something is pushed, yeah, I might be that guy.
I don't know. I just don't like that. I understand it's a personality thing, and I completely, logically understand what Tom is saying. But I don't want that to be the norm. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be the parent that has to always keep saying no or clean this up. Like, it should be a shared. Like the kid should know that, hey, both my parents don't like it when I do this.
Yeah. Mhm.
Like, not just my mom.
However, I could totally see scenarios in my head like video games. Come on, like where he just wants to play something with me, and it's time for him to sleep, and even I want to play with him. You know, especially when he's old enough to play FIFA, and then oh, it's bedtime, and me, I'm there. It's okay. It's bedtime for him, but me, I'm still playing FIFA, and I'm like, well, it'd be nice if he was here playing with me. And then he now comes in, and I'm like, okay, just play one game, okay? Just one game, then you go, and then that one game becomes two. I can see how things like that can happen.
Not
Yeah,
fair.
but let me make a commitment to trying to equal the playing field. I'll do the best in my ability. I will do all I can, all I can. Yeah.
Tomide and Kalpa live in Kilifi, Kenya, and are about to welcome their baby boy anytime now. Aside from their day jobs, Tom is a digital strategist and Kalpa works in product management. They have a binge-worthy YouTube channel called Chennai to Lagos, where they share about their lives and how they navigate their cultural differences as an interracial couple. They recently received their silver play button from YouTube for having over 100,000 subscribers. So I highly recommend that you check out their channel. We will check back in with them once baby Akinyemi is born and see how they're adjusting to being parents to a newborn. I have a very exciting episode coming up. And in that episode, I will share with you a conversation that I had with a friend who isn't a mom and is definitely not planning to be one. So make sure not to miss out on that episode. If you'd like to share your story on the podcast, just let me know by filling out the form on our website, that's mamatillspodcast.com, or shoot me a DM on our Instagram page. You can find all the relevant links in the show notes of this episode. If you're listening to this podcast on Spotify, why not take some time to answer the Q&A and take part in the poll? I think it's a really cool way for us to connect over an episode and for you to provide me feedback that I will use to make these episodes better and better. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, why not share it with your friends? Remember to follow or subscribe and rate wherever you listen to this podcast. It will really, really help me reach more listeners. And last but not least, join the fam on Instagram and subscribe to the newsletter, which I'm very, very happy to have revived. You can find a form to sign up to that on the website. That's mamatalespodcast.com. Okay, till next time. Bye.